Artificer is finally here thanks to mods, and as you can see, it's pretty dope. Yo, what's good? It's Miss Stora. We're back with episode 2 of must-have mods for Baldur's Gate 3. As a quick disclaimer, Baldur's Gate 3 is a complete and amazing game all on its own just as a base game, and my personal game of the decade, not just the year. It doesn't need mods per se. Again, if you're deciding to mod in general, then these are must-haves. Also, mod your game at your own risk. I've personally had no issues, but still you should be extra careful to follow instructions when modding Baldur's Gate 3. For today's video, in addition to the massive Artificer mod I'm going to be showcasing, most of these mods are actually subclass mods, in addition to a few miscellaneous ones at the end, so be sure to refer to the timestamps in the description of the video if you want to check out a certain mod specifically. But let's kick things off with the biggest mod of today's video, the Artificer and All Subclasses mod by Kaidarian. The GitHub page does mention that this was a collaborative effort, so shout out to everybody who worked together to bring this mod to life. As it sounds, this adds an entire new class to the game, the highly requested Artificer, in all 4 of its subclasses, which are official to D&D 5th edition, by the way. It's honestly impressive how complete this mod is. Now, there are some changes to the class and subclasses to make them work a bit better within Baldur's Gate 3, just like Larian themselves have done with a lot of classes and subclasses, but as far as I can tell and have read, pretty much everything is intact as close as possible to rules as written. And most importantly, for this mod to nail, it feels like you're playing a true Artificer. So the mainstays are all here. You got your infusions that you can buff yourself or your party with. You can create magic items, all sorts of cool stuff, spell casting at level 1 for a half caster, cantrips, the whole 9 yards, right? And as for their subclasses, like I said, all 4 of them right here. You got the Alchemist, Armorer, Artillerist, and Battlesmith. All of these subclasses offer pretty drastic changes to playstyle too. For the Alchemist, think Potion Brewer rather than something like Full Metal Alchemist. Their extra spells lean into healing, support, and damage dealing, and their main feature is creating these experimental elixirs that they can buff themselves or allies with. Really useful bonuses are here, such as increasing someone's attack rolls and saving throws, increasing their AC, or even potions or elixirs rather that give someone the ability to straight up fly for a time. This subclass can thematically range from the party's loving potion brewer all the way to their mad scientist. The Armorer is essentially like magical Iron Man. Okay, it's really cool. Their extra spells provide more damage mostly, but a bit of defense and utility as well. Their main feature though makes it so that any armor they wear can switch between 2 modes. Guardian mode for tanking and keeping enemies attacking you instead of allies, and infiltration mode for better stealth and some good range damage. A pretty dope subclass thematically in my opinion. Artillerists, they're all about that range damage. They get like 1 extra defensive spell, with the rest, all of them are about damage. Their main feature is the Eldritch Cannon, which they can either summon as a little construct companion, or use as a handheld magical firearm to dish out some great damage with its Force Ballista for single target or Flamethrower for AoE. The cannon can also provide support using its Protector ability to give some temporary health to allies. This subclass is for those of us that want to play a magical gunslinger. And lastly, the Battlesmith is for those that want to rush headfirst into the heat of battle alongside their inventions. Their extra spells are a mix of support, damage, and defense, but their primary feature is the Steel Defender, which is a faithful construct companion they've created via tinkering that charges into battle alongside you, growing stronger as the Battlesmith increases in level. They can also use their intelligence modifier for weapon attack and damage rolls instead of like strength or dexterity. That combined with their construct companion makes them amazing melee or ranged weapon fighters. As you can see, there is a lot to the Artificer mod, but with that overview done, let's now take a look at some of the other subclass mods, starting with the fan favorite, the Divine Soul Sorcerer, which comes to us from the revised Sorcerer subclasses mod by Pierre Oeri. I believe that's how you pronounce it at least. For the most part, all of the features are here intact, rules as written, save for the level 6 feature. Having been tweaked just a bit, it's still a work in progress mod. This subclass is a fan favorite though because it's a sorcerer that can learn spells from the entire cleric spell list. Being able to twin and otherwise alter incredible spells like Guiding Bolt and Healing Word is really fun, and thematically, they're really cool as the source of their magic can be traced back to something divine in nature, like various celestials, such as angels or even Keating. For roleplay purposes, they also get access to options in dialogue with the cleric tag. Keeping with that same theme, next up is the Celestial Warlock mod by Fluffy Dragon. These warlocks, instead of making deals with malevolent forces like devils or liches, have instead made deals with the forces of good in exchange for power. You know, that being celestials or some other very powerful upper planar creature or entity. These warlocks gain features that let them pump out some decent healing from a distance, and they can also learn a few really good cleric spells like Guiding Bolt and Flaming Sphere, giving the warlock an early game summon that they currently lack, as well as some other goodies. You know, up until now, the only options for patrons for warlocks are those that are typically up to no good, but if you want to play a warlock that does good deeds in exchange for their power, it's on the table now. Next up, we'll be taking a look at the Arcane Archer Fighter subclass mod by Shiva Shadow. These are fighters that study a unique elven method of archery that weaves magic into attacks to produce these supernatural effects. Think basically like a magic-based Hawkeye or Green Arrow. Their features are all intact here, again rules is written for the most part, and their arcane shots can do some pretty cool things. There's arrows here that can burst after an attack, detonating and dealing force damage in an AoE. Other ones that can have illusion magic weaved into them, dealing extra psychic damage and causing foes to go blind, and arrows that can entangle their foes in these thorny vines, and that's just to name a few. A really flavorful and fun subclass if you've been looking to play an archer that isn't necessarily a ranger or a rogue and is a bit more flashy with their tricks. Now let's talk about the Wizard's Traditions War Magic mods by Fieroff. I think I'm saying that correctly. This mod adds the War Magic subclass to the game, which is a wizard that specializes in a blend of evocation and abjuration magic rather than focusing on a single one to be a valuable asset on the battlefield. This means that they focus on both offense and defense in the mix. These wizards have some features like increasing their initiative by their intelligence modifier, making them much more likely to go first in combat. They can raise their AC a bit as a reaction every turn to avoid attacks that would have otherwise hit, at the cost of only being able to use cantrips on their next turn. They can also deal a bit of extra damage on a future spell whenever they cast a spell magic or use counterspell. This is great for people that have been looking for a wizard that's a bit more unique than just the standard School of Magic specialization options that we have for subclasses currently. And lastly, for the subclass section, let's go over the Monk subclass Way of Mercy mod by Platypus Venom. Monks of the Way of Mercy use their ki to manipulate life force to heal and harm. They're these wandering healers to the poor and the hurt, but for those that unfortunately can't be saved, they deliver death swiftly as an act of mercy. As such, they get features allowing them to dish out a bit of healing in unique ways, but conversely can also use ki to do harm, dealing extra necrotic damage here and there. They eventually become really adept healers, learning to cure negative conditions like blindness, poison, paralysis, or even stun effects. Their later features are so potent that honestly, an adventuring party could be just fine having a Way of Mercy monk as their main healer instead of like a cleric or a druid. And for this last part of the video, I'm just gonna put all of these non-subclass mods together in no particular order, but some of these are really cool, so you're still going to want to keep an eye out, like the Art of Imbuing mod by Clint Mitch. This is a pretty dope mod that's inspired by rules in D&D that can allow players to craft their own magic items. Full disclosure on this mod, however, it is currently as of the time of recording this video, set to hidden on Nexus Mod, so it can't be downloaded at the moment. But this is something the mod author has done before, only to then, put the mod back up with an update. My guess is they're probably doing the same thing this time around while they fix some issue. Essentially though, this mod allows players to imbue mundane weapons with additional damage types. There's elemental imbuements like cold, lightning, and fire, but there's also non-elemental options as well, like psychic, force, radiant damage, and more. I think it's pretty balanced, as to imbue something, there's a cost, and I personally couldn't find this one topaz that I needed for the weapon I've been wanting to make until like Act 2. So it's not like you can realistically make a super overpowered weapon early on. This recording is in the Druid's Grove, I know that, but I just recorded here for the scenery. This character is currently level 8 towards the end of Act 2, and I just now gathered everything I needed to make this weapon finally. Some of the materials you'll need, like anvils of increasing rarity, you can buy from merchants, but they're not cheap. But other materials you can find while you're just out adventuring, like vials of essence containing a certain damage type, and the gems that you'll need to correspond with those essence types. The lowest level of imbuements are temporarily, and they only grant this small buff of like a 1d4, but the higher level, more costly imbuements go all the way up to making the weapon magical, giving it a +2 enchantment, and providing it with a 2d4 damage boost of the damage type you're crafting. Of course, every damage type has a corresponding visual effect that you're always going to see on your weapon, and many weapon types are supported. You can imbue everything from a battle axe to a stick of salami if you want to. This is great because throughout the game, some weapon types just straight up get no love when it comes to having cool weapons available, at least when compared to something like long swords, which there's plenty of great options out there. Next up is a simple mod, that being Aether's Black Dye by Aetherpoint. Honestly, I'm really surprised that this wasn't in the base game. I'm telling you, I was hunting for some all black dye my entire first playthrough, and was real disappointed to find that it just wasn't in the base game, at least not that I could see. But I'm glad it's here now, and it turned out pretty amazing. This overall looks really good. Now let's also talk about another simple mod called True Initiative by Leadfoot 89. Funnily enough, BG3 uses a D4 for initiative. This mod makes it so that a D20 is used instead, and it's just a nice little touch that has changed up the flow of combat in my game a bit, and it makes BG3 feel even closer to a true D&D experience. To keep things moving, we got the No More Dirt and Blood mod by Margerard. This mod is also real simple, just makes it so that your characters don't accumulate blood and dirt on them throughout the adventuring day, but they're still going to show signs of sweating. Again, it was cool at first, right, to see signs of fighting build up over time on the party, but I got tired pretty quickly of seeing my melee fighters just being covered in blood in almost like every dialogue scene. And for the last mod of this video, we got Vessnelle's Hair Collection by Vessnelle. This mod adds a good amount of new hairstyles to character creation for humans, elves, drow, githyanki, half-elves, and tieflings, both for male and female characters. I believe as of now there's been an update. I think half-orcs might be supported as well. Don't quote me on that. I really like this mod. I really do. The fourth hairstyle in particular for males, I've actually decided to use for my next playthrough. Just keep in mind, since these are modded hairstyles, they might clip a bit. And that's gonna do it for episode 2. What kind of mods for Baldur's Gate 3 are you most excited for, or what existing ones do you want me to talk about? I'll be making more videos like this, highlighting mods as new ones get released and updated. As always, I'm Miss Dora. I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all be easy. Peace.